Hey there, I'm back. Video 2, and I'm going to piggyback this on the last video that had to do with trusting in divine timing and in the divine plan. And this one is going to be about trusting from that higher level of trust in romantic relationships. So I did mention the one that I have in the playlist that has to do with trust in romantic relationships. It's under the romantic relationships and phases and stages. You can check that out. It is long, but there's a lot of good detail in there. And what I want to do is give another short kind of next phase of that. So in that video, we worked through the karmic levels of trust, conscious relationship levels of trust, moved into sacred partnership levels of trust. And as we moved into the higher stages of our development, we start recognizing that, yes, the trust needs to first come from being able to trust us, to trust ourselves, our truth, and really honor our truth. The next level starts to come into trusting in the divine. This can get a little bit trickier depending on your relationship with those forces that be that are there for us. And I think we're all in our own phases and stages of that evolution, hopefully, because, I don't know, for me it just seems like the expressions and those connections and that relationship continue to evolve and change. So from the embodiment perspective and the ascension perspective, maybe not for everybody. So what I want to start out by saying is that from the 3D perspective, and from the perspective of duality and polarity, which is how we operate, right, in this world, how we exist, moving towards that integrated union, the 3D into the 5D, we're still very much in the polarities. And we don't just leap from the polarities into oneness, right? Or into divine neutrality or divine love or unconditional love. We don't just get there overnight. It's a very subtle process of unwinding all of the things that keep us in division from one another and from that larger force. So the first thing that I want to say is that as we continue along this journey, and now we're taking it from sacred partnership into divine union. Divine union as a relationship template, but also divine union as the evolution of unification and oneness with all of life. But we're going to stay with the relationship piece. As we move towards that phase and stage, we begin to recognize that what we trust in is not necessarily other people. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit when I was first getting sober, right? Human beings are fallible. In our current state of operation, based on the reality that we live in, we as a species cannot give guarantees. And not only are we fallible, we are incredibly complex. And our life journey is incredibly complex. So when we want to put our complete faith and trust in another person, a person can, to the best of their ability, we or them, to the best of their ability, can try to make a promise or guarantee. I will never hurt you. I will never leave you. I will never, lie to you. All of these things, over time, I believe they do come true. They can be more, what do I want to say? More honed and true expressions that match a true experience. But maybe not in the ways in which we expect that to be. When somebody loves us and when we love somebody, of course, we don't want to hurt them. We don't want to, maybe misrepresent something. We don't want to leave them at certain points and times. But we don't know what comes down, through life for our own maturation and growth. We don't know what the divine plan is. And as we move into these higher realms, we're moving into learning that we're operating in a very different energy with a very different consciousness, and this consciousness impacts us on a soul level because it is how we evolve. It begins to guide us towards the divine more and more. When we put our trust in that which is for our highest good, and when we do that in relationships, this may mean that I trust you and I trust me to live within the mandates, so to speak, of the divine plan. And I understand that neither of us know what that full divine plan is. Now, as we get higher and higher into the sacred unions and divine union, there are, I believe, more guarantees. And I'm using that word super light because I don't know for sure. But from what can be gleaned at this point in time in these templates and blueprints is that the signature frequencies of divine counterparts that are meant to be together because it's part of the divine plan, and we can see that this is part of the twin flame template. Not all twins are meant to be together in partnership in the physical, but more and more of that, I'm sorry, my nose is itching. My hair is getting in my face. But more and more of that is happening. And so when the twins, or when the divine counterparts from these higher realms, when their blueprints click in, that becomes a very different kind of relationship because it is wholly, and I'm using that as HOLY, it is wholly and whole, WHOL, WHOLE, all right? There's a completion that's happening between those souls that the blueprints and the signature frequencies line up and create a holy wholeness. That does not happen in the earlier stages, and certainly not within karmic relationships. When we hit that point, I think it's safe to say, based on all of the other information around that, that is a final destination, relationship-wise. This is what is truly meant in holy matrimony. And I'm going to go into more of that with the divine union things, but there are terms that we use that we have, that have been passed down and that we utilize prematurely because we aren't at those stages and phases till death do us part. We aren't there yet. But because there's a paradigm that has missed this whole evolution that we're in, rightfully so. They didn't know what was coming, right? It's like ancient times, there were schools that knew this, that understood this. There were, temple rites and ceremonies that understood this. And then it was passed down from the esoteric into the exoteric realm, which is the secular society, taking these templates and trying to infuse them as a guide, as this is what we're doing, till death do us part. The holy matrimony is that, and yet it cannot be guaranteed. It tried to be guaranteed by law, right? Divorce was illegal. The shaming of divorce, that type of thing. You cannot marry again if you're a widow. I think primarily for women, going back to different phases and stages of eras. Lest I digress. But when we hit this level where we are resting in life, in the wisdom of life, in the love of life, in the truer connection to life, when we are resting in our own soul presence, and then when we come into a version of the Trinity, of a holy Trinity, right, where the masculine and feminine, use gender how it resonates, I'm talking about the polarities, come into oneness in and of God or the divine source, because they have purified levels of division and coming into oneness. So, and that oneness doesn't mean that they don't have their own differences. It means their blueprints and their signature are the perfect in-syncness, the perfect resonance for higher love learnings that are very different than the karmic stage of our, history, really. So it is then that we begin to trust in the divine plan. We don't put our trust in the other person per se. We put our trust in the wholeness of the divine presence, divine source love infused within us, infused within our divine counterpart. And it doesn't mean perfection either. It just means that the frequencies are able to sync up. And so there's going to be greater ease and grace. And what was the information that I got? I liked this. I got yesterday. That with these relationships, we're trusting in the divine plan and divine timing so that we don't come into the physical prematurely. Because if we force the relationship to happen before it's time, then we're left open to karmic loopholes, right? Pulling us into the duality and polarity in a way that is not harmonious, in a way that can create progressions because perhaps there hasn't been a deeper level healing. But when we wait for divine timing, when we wait for our soul and our higher aspects and God, to bring about that meeting, that reconciliation, that whatever that is, it's because it's ready. We're ready. Both counterparts are able then, doesn't mean that there's not going to be learnings or initiations, but we're going to be operating from a consciousness that understands on a deeper level what the union is, what it represents, and what it holds for each union couple, right? Each individual within that couple. I don't know. Trying to make it more complicated, probably, because there are subtleties here, and I get caught up in the subtleties because the subtleties matter. The nuances matter as we grow more subtle, right? As we grow into these more subtle realms and subtle expressions. So I am going to wind this down here. So this is part of the next evolution within romantic relationships. And those that are going to be hitting these thresholds, right, are going to part and parcel of it to make them harmonious, to allow everything to click, and to trust in the divine timing. The right alignments will happen when they are meant to, not because we want or need. And not because we're in our head wanting to have a guarantee of something working out or a fear of it not working out. It's not about any of that. It's about trusting what is unfolding from living teachings of higher dimensional consciousness that are bringing this way of life, this way of loving, higher, holy, true love onto this planet. And this is then what uplifts the frequency of the 3D, right? So there's this dancing and merging that's happening. It's ebbing and flowing, and it's chaotic and messy and painful and ugly, and then more light comes in and it brings more healing. So the divine union couples, sacred unions, divine unions, but this starts within, many of us are starting this now, right? We're not waiting till the perfected states. So it comes back to trust. Again, it comes back to trusting, knowing your connection with divine source within you, knowing divine connection in your life, wherever that is, right? Life, capital L, love, capital L, the light of your own being, the magic of synchronicities, your intuition, the tapping in to higher dimensions, the downloads, right? All of this is part of the divine unfolding and our divinity remembering what's coming, right? We know on some level what this all is, but we have to trust into it and put it in our communions, our prayers, our meditations, and access those spaces and places where you feel that knowing. And maybe if you are in that divine union, twin flame, counterpart templates and frameworks, it's in those spaces where you know your person, you feel them, right? It enlivens and opens you up in a very etheric yet more real way than this physical realm. Because we're being shown, we're being gifted, we're being blessed with recognition and remembrance of our frequency, of our true signature, of our true essence, and higher love when we can open to receive it, when we can really bask in it and choose it, and know that we're being guided into that timeline, into that potential, through our yes, through our faith and trust, through love. All right, that's all I'm going to say. So, hope this resonated, and I'll see you again. Subscribe or like if you appreciate the content, and maybe I'll see you on Patreon too. Thanks for being here.